Having laid waste to the field on the way up, Lance was enjoying the view on the way down after day one in the Pyrenees. Day two, though, was twice as tough. There was a free helicopter ride on offer to anyone brave enough to take it on. The Tour's first Pyrenean stage may have looked hard, but only until you turn the page of the official race guide and clock today's stage. 5 vicious climbs spread over 195 kilometres and finishing with the worst of the lot, up here to Plateau de Bay at an altitude of almost 1,800 metres. Before the gradient kicked in, though, there was some early sprint action, and Robbie McEwen took it ahead of Eric Zabel to cut the German's lead in the green jersey competition to just 1 point. For the second day running, Laurent Jalabert chanced his leg and was first over the second climb of the day. Behind him, the peloton paid rolling tribute at the memorial to Fabio Casartelli, the young Italian rider who died in a crash there in 1995. The mood of respect didn't last long, though, as Christophe Moreau and Carlos Sash got involved in a Franco-Spanish debate about the European single currency. As we join the race, Jalabert has been joined by Laurent Dufaux of Jean de la Tour and Once's Isidro Nozal. There's 14 kilometres to go, and the chase is on.
These 3 leaders right now, Phil, have an advantage of 2 minutes and 27 seconds, and here's the move coming from Once. Well, Armstrong has not panicked at all right now. In fact, I would think Roberto Jerez is riding in 3rd or 4th position there, just behind Armstrong. He will wait until the last possible moment. This is Chechu Rubiera, as Lance likes to call him, Jose Luis Rubiera on the front. Jerez is there on the left-hand side. Yoshiba Balocchi is very close in the pink jersey. The blue and pink jersey is Raimundas Rumsas. Now, he is very high in the overall standings at 4th place. At the back, there is Laurent Brochard. On the left-hand side there is Dario Frigo. A lot of men are suffering.
And as we go now to an attack by Laurent Jalabert at the front, he knows they are coming. The last time check was 1:50, and he's had to go. Now, is he going to be wiped away in sight of the finish again? But he's going to give it his best shot.
What a tough bike rider this is. He could see the other guys were weakening. He could feel that the time was slowly but surely coming back from the main field to himself, so he decides to go out alone. It'll be a hard call for him to survive, and it depends just exactly how much reserves he's got in those big thighs of his. It's 1:51 back to the yellow jersey group, which is being led by Lance Armstrong's teammate, Jose Luis Rubiera.
This is the pain now at the back of the course here. And once again, we are seeing riders crack wide open. Looks like Lyseca here as well. The rider he's passing is Ivan Basso in the white jersey. So the 3 leaders are split now by half a minute, and the Armstrong group a little more than 1 minute behind. And there is the situation with Oscar Sevilla dangling at the back and suffering to try and hang on. This is the man who won the Tour of Spain, or finished second rather in the Tour of Spain last year, lost it on the final day, currently in 13th place overall, and just trying to hold on to a very select group of bike riders here.
They are now just 14 seconds behind Laurent Jalabert. In the next half a kilometre, I expect they will see the Frenchman and rejoin him after he led this race for, again, almost 150 kilometres.
12 the just men, 12 and a half if we look back, because Sevilla keeps coming in and going back again. Poor old Laurent Jalabert, for the second time in as many days, is going to look over his shoulder and see Lance Armstrong. He can't believe his luck. He's almost given us the same stroke of his head as he did last time. Another brilliant day for Jalabert. Absolutely superb to go out on the attack for 2 days like he has done. He'll be rewarded this time at the finish with the lead in the King of the Mountains, but he really desperately wanted that stage win. In the distance, Oscar Sevilla. On the front is Jose Luis Rubiera, the teammate of Armstrong. Armstrong looking for his chance, I feel, here, as the pedal revs are lifted again, the gaps open once more. This mountain is relentless now, and it's 9 kilometres still of it to go.
Tyler Hamilton now just tapping Laurent Jalabert on the shoulders to say, well done, good ride, we nearly pulled it off. And Christophe Moreau, who we will have to wait to see what the referee's decision is tonight as to whether or not he will receive punishment for punching Carlos Sastre in the face. Look at the pedaling action there of Rubiera on the front, just sitting tucked in nice and calmly behind him. I think they're actually picking up the pace just a little bit here. In fact, you can see this is Rubiera's kick now towards the steeper part of the climb. He's lifting the pace. I think they want to try and put time between themselves and one or two other riders. That popped Andrei Kivilev off the back immediately, as well as Stefan Goubert.
Well, Goubert suddenly couldn't lift it up one more notch, doing a great ride. There he is, but Andrei Kivilev will be upset. He's going to have to dig deep, this rider from Kazakhstan, because the order's gone out from Lance to just lift the revs and see what happens. And he's reduced it by 2 riders, and here goes Heras. Now, is it pacemaking or an attack? And it might be...
Pacemaking.
I'm not sure what it is. I think it's pacemaking, yeah.
Well, it's put this man into serious difficulty as well, because they're literally blowing all of the Once riders away. Serrano now has popped off the back of the group. Roberto Heras has come forward right now. Yoshida Belocchi is surviving, and Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano has now gone. We are going down to the same trio as yesterday: Roberto Heras, Lance Armstrong and Yoshida Belocchi. But today they may well try and work one over on Yoshida Belocchi, because I think this is going to be a serious show of defiance by the man on the front, Roberto Heras. He wants to drag his team leader away, and his team leader in the yellow jersey would like to give him a victory.
Just under 7 kilometers to go, and we have the same 3 riders, but Armstrong has lifted the revs. It's up to Belocchi. Belocchi must go round Heras or lose ground. He's got to come round him now, and I don't know whether he can. Armstrong has made his move. Now, he had planned to attack here when he reconnoitred the area in May. We thought he might have changed his idea, because he had the lead already yesterday, when that to him was a little bit of a surprise. Belocchi has got to come, otherwise the Tour de France for him has ended right now.
But Belocchi's trying to survive. He's trying to keep in contact with Armstrong, but look out for Heras. And in fact, Armstrong doesn't look to me right now to be going full bore. He's waiting to see. He's tempting Belocchi to try and close the gap down to him. And look at this. I have a feeling any moment now we will see an acceleration come from Roberto Heras, because Heras is very comfortable on the wheel of Belocchi. Armstrong right now is not opening up the big gap, and Heras is very happy just to stay there.
Well, that's his job, to sit on Yoshida Belocchi for the last 2 years, 3rd overall in Paris in the Tour de France, currently lying in 2nd position. But now all Lance Armstrong is doing is repeating what he did in May by himself, and that's go out for a day's training. He's just sitting here pedaling like he's taught himself. The only good thing is it's a little bit warmer than it was in May. It was in the -Celsius temperatures then when he got to the top. Today it's around about 30 degrees Celsius.
Well, this was the hero of the day, and look at that time gap already. Laurent Jalabert is over 3 minutes behind Lance Armstrong at the front of the bike race.
Well, Lance Jalabert won't be at all interested in what is happening at the front of the race right now. Now, a little show of defiance by Belocchi, and I think that's all it was, because I don't think he can pick his pace up to go back up to alongside Lance Armstrong. Armstrong out of the saddle all of the time at the moment, keeping this perpetual cadence going that destroys the bike riders around the world. And once he knows he's beaten him, he'll settle back into his own rhythm. And in the next 5 kilometers, just how much time can he gain?
Well, you know, he doesn't even really need to do this. He's leading the bike race at the start of the day by 1 minute and 12 seconds. What he's doing is riding away from the rest of the field, stamping his authority on the Tour de France today. Put all this into perspective, by the way, Phil, Laurent Jalabert has lost 6 minutes on the climb so far, and this is the group behind, and look how Portero is suffering. He's up alongside Serrano and Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano, the man who led this race for such a long time. These men now can only hope to survive. There is Raimundas Rumsas on the far side, and Armstrong is slowly but surely opening the gap between himself and Yoshida Belocchi and his own teammate Roberto Heras.
Rumsas looking back here to Serrano. Is anybody going to help me? Gonzalez de Galdiano. These riders are together with Rumsas. Nobody going to help out here. Portero is there. 4 great mountain climbers rather, and they can't get near this man, who often tells us he's not a climber. It's a different type of racing as far as he's concerned. He just pedals quickly and rides them all off his wheel. Richard Virenque looks as though he's just come out of the shower right now. 5 times a winner of the King of the Mountains. Take a bottle and receive that little professional foul, a little push off the offering hand there from the director sportif. But nobody's going to complain about that. This is a vicious day in the Tour de France, as Armstrong now, through the exhaust fumes of our helicopter and the shimmering heat of a hot day on the Plateau de Bataille, Abate rather, is now going to put his name in the record books. The only other man who's won here is Marco Pantani.
Well, I think that was a correct slip of the tongue you made there, Phil, because Plateau de Bataille means the plateau of the battle, and that's exactly what's happening right now. This is a huge battle that Armstrong is delivering to himself and to the men who expect to outthrone him. And look at that, the gap is now becoming much more serious. It's slowly but surely opening. It's now hovering at 15 seconds. Roberto Heras is just sitting there for the moment, waiting to see if Bellocchi will fail. And if Bellocchi does fail, I wouldn't be surprised to see Roberto Heras launching the counter-attack. It's still an awful long way to go to the summit for Lance Armstrong right now, and he still has the frame of mind to sit up, breathe easily as he can, and take the drinks on board.
Well, in effect, Heras is 5 full minutes of taking second place in the Tour de France. At the moment, he's not in a position to do much about it as we go under 5 kilometres. Yes, still 5 kilometres to go. But there is a real chance, people already talking of a US Postal 1-2 in this year's race, as we switch back to the fatigue of Laurent Jalabert, because in the mountains still to come, this is a very tough tour now. A relatively calmer day tomorrow, then we climb the Giant of Provence, Mont Ventoux, and then we have 2 brutes, La Plagne and Les Deux Alpes in the Alps, before we go on to the final time trial and then the finish in Paris. Still an awful lot of racing to go. But there is nobody does not believe that Armstrong is not now going to win this tour by less than 10 minutes.
Face there on Yoshiba Bellocchi, he's really suffering. Armstrong is not opening up a huge gap at all. In fact, it's just crept up a couple more seconds to 17 seconds, and Bellocchi is basically riding his individual time trial right now. He is trying to limit his losses on the Texan, who's gone off on the hope of another lone victory, just like the victory he got himself yesterday. He would love to have offered that victory to the man who wears number 3 there, Roberto Heras, but what an incredible pedaling action of this man, who after his testicular cancer, Phil, lost himself 20 pounds in body weight, but he retained nearly all of the strength that he had. Heras has gone. Heras has attacked, and now this is what they were waiting for. This is, I think, why Armstrong hasn't opened up the gap at all. He was looking at the Spaniard who was in front of him. Look at this. He waited to see Bellocchi suffering, and he went straight over the top of him. This was the strongest man of the race yesterday, and very quickly Armstrong will get that information from Johan Brunel. I think it'll be 1-2 tonight.
He will wait. Once he knows he has cracked Bellocchi, he will wait for Heras, and he will give him the stage as a present from yesterday. That would be the form, I would think, of the team, and it's working out to perfection. Now, this little climber from Spain, magnificent yesterday, the outstanding man on the mountain, is now flying towards his captain.
But what a professional. He looked over his shoulder to make sure that he had a very good gap between himself and Yoshiba Bellocchi, because he would not want at all to drag up Armstrong's competitor up to the wheel of the man who wears number 1. In a few moments' time, Armstrong will certainly get that information from Johan Brunel. He will lift his pedaling action just a small amount, and I think he has done that right now, and he will very shortly be with Armstrong, and what a sight that will be.
Well, the American flag is waving there for this brilliant athlete. Once given a 20% chance of life because of a cancer, he's recovered and returned to win the Tour de France 3 times, and no one will give you odds against him winning it a 4th. Here we are in the first mountain stretch of this year's race, the Pyrenees. Little Roberto Heras, Lance selected him, handpicked him, brought him to the team to help him in the mountains. Now he's going to wait for him, and I think will give him the stage win, because yesterday, he says, Heras was simply fantastic, and if he could have let him win yesterday, he would have done. But it was too dangerous because Yoshiba Bellocchi was right there as well. Now Armstrong keeps the revs up, but he knows the little man from Spain will pedal just as quickly as he can as we head towards the summit of the Plateau de Bataille. And I think, and I've lost count now, we're looking for a 4-kilometre banner. Yes, we are. 4 kilometres to go for Lance Armstrong. The clock will start now on Roberto Heras.
Well, they're coming out of the very steep part of the climb right now. There's the 4-kilometre banner that Armstrong went under a few moments ago. And here is Roberto Heras. What a beautiful pedaling action. This man is a brilliant little climber, and one day he too may win the Tour de France. He came alongside Lance Armstrong to learn, to try and improve his time trialing ability. But Bellocchi is also making a pretty smart recovery here too. He is inside that gap as well. 12 seconds to Roberto Heras. They're on the false flat part of this course right now. This is the part of the course where you can get the big gear in and start ticking it over. And you can see there Belocchi changing up the gears.
Well, this is the plateau bit of the climb now, and Armstrong knows he's coming. He looked over his shoulder. There are the gaps, 13 seconds and 25, as Lance Armstrong now just keeps his rhythm going. He would dearly love Heras to come alongside him and say thanks for everything you've done for 2 days for me in the mountains, and he's given him a brilliant lead overall now. He'll be heading out to at least a minute and a half in the classification tonight, unless Belocchi recovers on this false flat. Heras looking over his shoulder to see. If Belocchi catches him, of course, Heras will stop working. He won't continue to take him up to the leader, and he's always checking on that. The face of the fighter, the only fighter seemingly in this year's Tour de France who believes he can have some form of combat with Armstrong.
The gaps are very close indeed right now. Armstrong leads Roberto Heras by 14 seconds. In fact, Heras is slipping back, and it's then just 12 seconds to Yoshiba Belocchi. If Heras doesn't close the gap on Armstrong right this moment, it's going to be Armstrong riding on his own towards victory. Armstrong really dare not slow down too much, because he needs to build his advantage over Belocchi, his advantage which was at the start of today 1 minute and 12 seconds.
There's a small time bonus on the line as well, which will push him out even further. But the other two will also get time bonuses, which won't completely nullify the escape. But Armstrong himself now just doing all he need do to increase his lead in today's stage of the Tour de France. There is just those 10 seconds between the two Spanish riders. Belocchi looks to me as though he's coming back, because Heras has decided he can't reach his captain.
I think he was told to sit up there, because just at the moment when the US Postal Service team car went by, I think that was the moment he ceased to chase the front man, Lance Armstrong. He will now wait for Yoshiba Belocchi, and I think allow Yoshiba Belocchi to set the tempo behind. What was happening there was that Heras was caught in between the two men, and he was acting as a carrot, and he was the man that in fact Yoshiba Belocchi was aiming at to catch, and that was encouraging the man who was in third place on the road.
Far down the slopes now, the ailing figure of Laurent Jalabert wants the leader. As we now see at 3 kilometers to go, Heras has turned off. Belocchi is coming back, so Heras will now sit behind him and wait, and maybe choose to sprint to second place. Armstrong has been given his head now as the leader of the team to build on his overall position and to increase his lead in the Tour de France tonight. There is Roberto Heras taking now the ticket collector's position, the man who will do no work and just see everybody is on board.
Well, if this had been just a little bit steeper than it is right now, I think Roberto Heras would have made contact with Lance Armstrong. But Armstrong is on the part of the course which absolutely suits him. He can use his special power to get the bigger gear ticking over right now, and he has now started to build the big time gap over Yoshiba Belocchi. It is now 35 seconds to Heras and Belocchi right now. Heras has to play the team role. He was hoping, I think, to get himself a victory here. Coming back, this is Santiago Botero. And in fact, it looks as if the man Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano is also pulling himself slowly but surely back to his own teammate.
Well, trying to, as the gaps close together, because the queen bee of the pack has just simply flown away and left the workers on the mountainside. And here he is, just riding to glory. This will be his 14th stage win in the Tour de France. A stage win which has gone past the memorial stone to his friend Fabio Casatelli. Means a lot to Lance as he now continues his way to the top of the plateau. The kilometers are a little bit easier now as we start to level out on this beautiful mountain, covered in thousands of people today to watch an American ride to victory again.
Well, look at this pedaling action as well, Phil. That's the pedaling action that exactly the same as he had in the team time trial some time ago. And you look at that compared to the pedaling action of these two riders right now. It was that pedaling action that may well have lost Lance Armstrong the individual time trial around Lorient. But right now it is being used to absolute perfection on the last 2 kilometers of the climb up here to the Plateau de Bay.
2 kilometers, less than 2 miles, 1.8 to be precise for Lance Armstrong. And he's in amongst the motorbikes now. They'll chase those away as he continues progress towards the summit, as everybody just simply goes berserk here. This is what they wanted to see. They've waited probably 8 hours and perhaps even 24 for those that came last night. The Basque flags are flying and they're waving at an American who is destroying the riders from Spain as he just rides towards the summit. A bigger lead in the Tour de France today, and no one will give you any odds now as to who will win this year's Tour de France.
Well, under the banner there of 2 kilometres to go, it's 32 seconds to these two chasers right now. But the position of their pedalling action is completely different to that of Lance Armstrong. They are now just hoping to survive. Yoshiba Belocchi is trying to increase his advantage in the second place at the Tour de France this year. And Roberto Heras is going to leap up the overall standing this afternoon. Probably he will find himself well inside of the top 10. But Armstrong, Phil, is ticking away with that most unbelievable pedalling action which he has cultivated over the years since he came back from testicular cancer. The crowd here are encouraging every bike rider. They're even encouraging Lance Armstrong at the front. Even though the majority of people here are Basque, they are recognizing what is an unbelievable athletic performance.
Well, they're shouting because they're saluting magnificent athletes here in the Pyrenees who have ridden to the maximum over some of the highest mountains this country has to offer. One man has proved he is head and shoulders above everybody else, but they'll shout even the last man home. It's a tremendous achievement by all of the riders. But what can you continue to say about this man? Superlatives simply don't describe just how he rides a bike. He comes here in the winter, he checks every inch of the road, he knows exactly where he's going to attack, exactly what he's going to do. He doesn't care who enters the Tour de France, he just sticks to the game plan.
And the game plan he's got worked out very many months in advance, and that's why he comes to look at these courses, and that's why he plans everything down to the final little minute of his attacks. Laurent Jalabert is almost 3 kilometres behind Lance Armstrong on this climb. That 3 kilometres is going to take him around about 9 minutes to cover. Armstrong right now can see the Flamme Rouge in front of him. That little bridge over the road you can see there is the last kilometre of today's stage, and Armstrong still shows no signs of weakness at all. He's pedaling absolutely perfectly. This special cadence he's managed to cultivate over the last few years is very reminiscent of the cadence in the mountains of Miguel Indurain, and the great Spaniard. He won 5 Tour de France's in a row.
Well, he's nosing away to almost a minute on the chase now. A minute added to the 1:12 he already has, plus his small time bonus on the line. He'll be not far off 2.5 minutes. It might even be nearer 3 minutes overall when we see the final situation tonight. Armstrong taking the shortest way to the summit of the plateau and building on every inch of the way. This will be his 6th win of the season, and well, I won't say it'll be the sweetest, but it'll just be another routine day for this magnificent athlete.
It reminds me what we said very much earlier on today, Phil, you and I, comme d'habitude, it said in the French newspapers this morning, business as usual. That's exactly what it has been for Lance Armstrong this afternoon, and that's also what it has been for his team, who've done a magnificent job setting up this victory. Yoshiba Belocchi is the man wearing number 21 there. He's just trying to keep himself as close to as possible to Lance Armstrong this afternoon, and Armstrong's teammate there wearing number 3, Roberto Heras, again doing an absolutely superb job to set up victory number 14 for Lance Armstrong here in stages at the Tour de France.
And no one currently racing in the professional circuit has won that many stages in the Tour de France. 14 for Lance Armstrong. He'll claim his 3rd yellow jersey of the Tour, having won the prologue, and his 3rd stage in this year's Tour de France. And on this sort of form, Paul, just how many stages can he win? The record, by the way, is held by Freddie Martins, and in post-war years by Freddie Martins and Eddie Merckx, 8 wins.
Well, you know, if you look at the number of mountaintop finishes that are still left to go, Lance Armstrong could probably win most of those as well. I think he may well just try and ride a much more tactical race going into the next big mountains terrain, which is going to be the Mont Ventoux and then followed by the Alps. But this is going to go down as a great victory, one that was set up perfectly by his team. He's inside 200 meters to go right now.
Lance Armstrong left no doubt in anybody's mind, the #1 bike rider, the winner of the Tour de France for the past 3 years, and he will be the world-ranked #1 by the end of this tour again, as he now races to increase his overall lead. 2 profitable days here in the Pyrenees. Yesterday it was close, 6 hours aboard that saddle, and this time a little punch in the air yesterday. It's a clear two-arm salute today, because today he laid the foundation which will win him the Tour de France again this year.
And did you see that, Phil? 6 hours in the saddle, an average speed of only 33 kilometers an hour today. That's 19 miles an hour. That gives you an idea of just how difficult today's stage has been. Yoshiba Belocchi now is just trying to lose as little time as possible, but he's already lost himself 30 seconds on the clock on the finishing line. That added up to the bonus is 50, so it's going to be a big plummet down tonight.
Well, I wonder if Heras will make it a 1-2 for US Postal. He's itching to go over the top of him. He'll wait till he sees the line at 45 seconds the gap. Belocchi won't have the legs now. He's tried to limit his losses as little Roberto Heras grits his teeth, drives up to the line. US Postal first and second. Heras will climb up the overall classification tonight. He might even get a separate time as he comes round to the line. A minute and 2 behind, a minute 3, and probably a minute 5 for Josiba Belocchi, as Patero comes in after that, and Igor Gonzalez de Galeano after that.
So the same three riders alone at the finish for the second day running, although this time Belocchi had to yield not just to Armstrong but to Heras as well. The man who started it all eventually finished 11.5 minutes down, consoled by the acclaim of the crowd and his fellow riders, and no doubt also by the fact that he's now leading the King of the Mountains competition. 24 minutes back was Eric Zabel, like Robbie McEwen, well out of the points for the stage finish, and therefore still in the green jersey by a single point. Now here's what the stage did to the standings. Armstrong confirms his status and extends his lead. Belocchi is the closest man to him, but getting further away, nearly 2.5 minutes back now. Heras is up to 7th after 2 great days riding in the mountains. David Miller slips to 74th. Two days in the Pyrenees, 2 stage wins for the defending champion. And the best Spanish climber was riding on his team. Beautiful scenery, but a pretty demoralising picture for Lance Armstrong's rivals. Good afternoon. Stage 13 was a bit of a recovery day, really, to split up what might otherwise be a fatal 1-2 punch of the Pyrenees and Mont Ventoux. The scheduling was academic for Jackie Durand, mind you, because he was thrown off the race last night for using a team car to drag him up some of the climbs. The cameras didn't see it, but evidently the commissaires did. Mind you, the car can't have been going very fast because he still came in 41 minutes behind the leaders yesterday. Anyway, he's now on his way home, and lucky not to be joining him is Christophe Moreau, who the commissaires decided was the aggressor in yesterday's fight with Carlos Sash, although to be honest, there was about as much actual fighting in it as your average Audley Harrison bout. Anyway, Moreau was given a 2-minute penalty, which since he was 20 minutes down to start with won't mean much to him, and Carlos Sash got 20 seconds, which seemed to confirm his view that he was the injured party.
Pues que es un señor que no tiene respeto por nadie y no merece la pena hablar de él, ¿no? No hace falta hacerle publicidad porque él solo se la hace. Pues es un corredor que siempre no tiene respeto por nadie, quiere ir siempre donde él quiere y no sabe que la carretera es para todos los corredores, ¿no? Y prefieren hablar de este señor.
Now here's a look at the stage 13 route. 171 kilometres with 3 climbs near the start, but otherwise flat until Béziers, where there was a little kick up towards the finish line.
This is the chasing group now with Laurent Jalabert. They're 1 minute behind right now. They will just ride to the finish and hope to survive. Now this is the traffic circle I was talking about a few moments earlier, but from now onwards, Phil, it's nearly all uphill to the finish. It's not much, but after 100 miles in the saddle, it's a long climb.
And it's who is going to judge the sprint to the best. They've tried to rid each other, but it hasn't worked out. Now it is going to be a 1 dash to the line, and you've got to judge your sprint to perfection. It is a long way up this road. Echeverria is making it plainly obvious he is feeling like the wind today. He's looking at everybody. They'll ride on one side of the road here, forcing the attack only on the right shoulder of the riders. Lataza, by the way, at the front, only ever won 1 race in his life a couple of years ago, and he's starting to sprint. Well, that'll cost him the race because you can't lead out for the line and win. But look now at the face of Echeverria in 2nd place. Bogart is there. Brochard is dropping off the back a little bit. Miller is in 4th place. Miller's going to have to say something special here as they come over the top towards the line. Now Lataza is leading out Echeverria to perfection. One Spaniard leading out the other, but they're not friends, and he realizes now And Laurel Echeverria won't go through. Miller waits widely. Take the wheel of Brochard. Yes, he does, because Laurent Brochard's seen his chance now. Miller is shoulder to shoulder as they come to the line now. Brochard is going. David Miller might finish this one off. He's won a stage in the Tour of Spain before like this. Now, can he win this one? David Miller is going to take the stage, and absolutely brilliantly done. David Miller is not the fastest sprinter in the world, but you would have thought so today. But a win for Britain in the Tour de France today, the only British rider in the race. David Miller takes the honours.
As David Echeverria now knows to his cost, Miller brilliantly outmanoeuvred the Spaniard to take the stage win, with Michael Bogard, Laurent Brochard and David Latazza making up the numbers. 10 minutes behind them, Eric Zabel and Robbie McEwen were winding up for a sprint to decide the lead in the points competition.
But now Baden Cook is going to try and take the lead, but Danilo Hondo here is coming up wondering where his teammates are. He doesn't know what to do, but the sprint is starting now, and it is where the green and the white jerseys go, and McEwen is coming on the left here. Chopped a little bit out of it. He's going to finish ahead of Zabel. It is touch and go, but I do believe that they will now be equal on points.
Well, they were, but that activated the tie-break procedure, which starts with stage wins, of which they've each got one apiece. McEwen, though, has been marginally better placed at the finish over the rest of the stages, so he now leads the green jersey competition by no points. As to who'll be wearing it by the end of tomorrow, though,
no predictions.
None from the race director either. Jean-Marie Leblanc was busy congratulating David Miller, who now has a road stage win to go with his prologue victory 2 years ago. The first British rider to register one since Max Chandry in 1995.
I was on a mission today. I told the team that I wanted to win today, and I knew I had to go on the first climb after like 8 kilometres, so I put myself in the front line of the start for once, and I thought, right, this is it, I'm going. And yeah, I was relaxed, but I was confident.
All right then, let's update the overall for you. Although there's not much to update really, because all the big names finished in the bunch. Laurent Jalabert sneaks into the top 10, courtesy of being in the break. David Miller took back 10 minutes of the 40. He lost saving his legs yesterday. There was just one climb on stage 14. Unfortunately for the riders, it was this one, Mont Ventoux. Not what you're looking for after you've already ridden 200 kilometres through the shadeless scorch of Provence. And to make things worse, they'd be able to see it long before they got to it, because Mont Ventoux dominates the landscape in Provence on the same scale that it haunts the riders' imaginations. Not a mountain that you'd want to tackle in anything less than your best physical condition, as David Miller, yesterday's stage winner, was perhaps about to find out. After his brilliantly timed sprint to the line in Béziers yesterday, David undertook a rigorous programme of rehydration, starting with a beer to help him produce the post-race urine sample, and working his way through a quantity of Chateau Photo Opportunity champagne and onto wine with dinner. Not quite out of the Lance Armstrong handbook of stage celebrations, that, and it didn't look as though we'd be seeing David up the front today. In fact, unless the team sent someone to his hotel room this morning to wake him up, it looked like we might not see him at all. Anyway, quite apart from yesterday's festivities, this was a stage he was dreading, and he wasn't the only one. From Tommy Simpson's death on this climb 35 years ago to Eddie Merckx finishing the stage in an oxygen tent, Mont Ventoux is baked in history, and none of it is reassuring. For Lance Armstrong, though, the history is more recent and more personal. In 2000, the stage to Mont Ventoux was a microcosm of the whole tour. Italy's Marco Pantani continually attacking, Lance Armstrong matching his tempo, then upping it. As they approached the line together, Armstrong passed up the chance of an historic win at one of cycling's holy places and offered it to Pantani as a mark of respect to a great climber. Far from accepting gracefully, though, Pantani continued his attacks, this time in the media, and as relations between the two riders descended into war by press conference, Armstrong realised he'd given away an opportunity that may never come again. Today, of course, it has.
If I get there and in good position and I have an opportunity to win again, will I take it? Absolutely. Well, I mean, would I ever do what I did again? No, never.
Understandably, this of all stages is the one Armstrong wants to win. At the same time, though, this of all stages is impossible to guarantee.
It's not a climb or a mountain that you can be too cocky with. I mean, you have to respect that mountain because it's so difficult. In my opinion, it's the hardest climb in the Tour, maybe even the hardest climb in France. So for me to say I want revenge against the mountain or I want revenge against what happened in 2000 would be a mistake because it's hard and you need to just basically survive it.
Well, that's what every stage de Mont Ventoux looks like, because the final climb is too tough to include any others along the way. So there's 200 kilometres of dread before everyone's worst fears are realised. An 11-man break formed remarkably early in the stage, and when it hit the slopes of the Ventoux, two men went off the front of it. Russia's Alexander Botcharov and five-time King of the Mountains winner Richard Viron, who up until this point could have been riding in disguise for all the impact he'd had on the race.
5 minutes and 3 seconds. That's Armstrong to Vironk, and Vironka's gone.
Well, Vironka's launched the attack. He came up a couple of times alongside Botcharov to see just whether or not he had it in his legs right now. And Vironk looking for the challenge that brought him the title of best climber in the Tour de France on 5 occasions, and right now he's opened up just a small advantage. This is a scurry really to test and see whether Botcharov has got anything at all left in his legs. These two riders are 5 minutes ahead of the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong, and when we looked back at the Armstrong group a few moments ago, Phil, I wasn't sure whether or not Levi Leipheimer was there. His teammates have done everything possible to keep him in contact, but I think he too was having a hard time with the accelerations being set on the front by Jose Luis Ribiera.
Well, Richard Viron, this was his plan for the day, to get an early move, get some time, and then race for the finish like a rabbit. And he's got him onto the climb with a lead of just over 7.5 minutes. Now, with that gap at 5 minutes and 10 seconds, he's about 10.5 kilometres from the summit. He's left himself a chance.
He has a chance. He's a climber. Once you've been a climber, you always have that ability in your legs to stay clear off the front of the main field. He now will try and find as much courage as possible. He's looking over his shoulder to see if he has opened the gap between himself and Alexander Botcharov. And as we pull back there, you can see that he has slowly but surely started to increase the distance between him and the Russian. There is the Russian right now, and the Russian takes on board a drink. A little professional acceleration there for the Russian, but that's not going to help him too much in the picture, the long picture of this whole climb up to the summit of Mont Ventoux.
He's already 1 minute behind Richard Viron. It is amazing how fast you lose time when the elastic snaps, Paul. 1 minute back to that man.
When you go on the slopes of a mountain like this. Viron now is looking for all of his courage to try and get himself to the summit of the climb. But there is the group of the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong. And looking down on the group, we can see Armstrong, Belocchi is in there, Acevedo is there, Rumsas is on the left-hand side. The white jersey there is Ivan Basso, Santiago Botero is there as well. Francisco Mancebo is also there for Ibanesto.com. So all of the American challenges for Lance Armstrong have disappeared today, again on the slopes of the mountains. And again, another acceleration coming from Acevedo, trying to put pressure on Armstrong. But look at the ease that Armstrong came across as they go past Thor Hushovd.
Well, this is the second time he stretched the team. He lost Igor Gonzalez to Galdiano in the first attack. At least Belocchi has hung on. I think Belocchi is actually riding very, very well indeed here. He's just going to follow Lance Armstrong, but he's got to go for him sooner or later if he wants to. And no longer on the back after that acceleration is the Colombian. So Botero has gone.
Well, that
there he is. No, yes, he is.
Hushovd going backwards, but also behind them is Mancebo, and I think even further back is Santiago Botero. So that acceleration really has caused a serious gap in this group now. The gap again reducing in numbers all of the time. Armstrong looks very comfortable. Rumsas is riding a superb Tour de France. He starts the day in 4th position, and I think by the end of this afternoon he will find himself in a podium position in 3rd spot, because Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano was left behind quite a few kilometers ago.
This man still hanging on. Richard Viron, 4 minutes 12 seconds. The last time check we have at 9 kilometers from the finish. It is still just on 30 seconds a kilometer. He has to concede.
Well, his position and his pedaling action is very good right now. It still looks fluid. He's still getting out of the saddle when the steep part of the gradient kicks into his thighs, keeping the tempo as high as possible. He has to be very concentrated right now because he's a great chance of surviving, the only man. And I actually didn't give him that much of a chance a few kilometers ago, because I had a feeling after 180 kilometers at the front of the bike race he would have dead legs when he came to this climb. But right now he is riding alone in front of a group which is becoming the very elite group of the Tour de France, the group with Lance Armstrong, Basso, Rumsas and Yoshiba Belocchi. Team management coming up alongside, they will give him as much encouragement as possible, but this man will get an awful lot of encouragement from the people at the side of the road, because he has produced some incredible exploits on the roads of the Tour over the last many years. Vironk has been quite an animator of any of the mountain stages, whether they were stages in the Pyrenees or in the Alps, and right now he would very much love to win here, because this is probably the closest mountain he could really get to home ground. He's a Provençal himself. He comes from in between Marseille and Toulon, and right now his pedaling field looks pretty good, and he might well just cause the big surprise of the day, because I don't think anybody thought Vironk would win here.
There's a nice view of the top of Mont Ventoux. You can see it for over 150 kilometers on a clear day around France. And right at the highest point is where we are sat and where the riders are coming towards us.
Well, Richard Vironk right now not very far away from Chalet-Renard, and from this point onwards he goes out, and there's a move here. This is Bilocchi at last, and Armstrong has to respond to this one.
Well, you've got to take your hat off to the Spaniard. He said he felt he was good enough to attack Armstrong in the mountains. Now we've got the Spanish-American tandem, and Armstrong says, you do it to me and I'll do it to you. And he's reacted immediately now, and you never ruffle the feathers of the American, because I don't think Bilocchi has the legs now.
Well, don't play with me, that's what he said. The move came from Yoshiba Bilocchi. It was a good move, a violent attack, and immediately Armstrong responded. He's coming up. This is the man who was in the breakaway a few moments ago, Pradera. He can only look and see what's happening. He will see his team leader behind him. He will try and recover to pace him for a few moments, but that's not going to happen right now. Armstrong would have been content to sit there and ride to the summit in the company of those other guys, but once the attack came, he had to launch the counter-attack.
Well, I salute Bilocchi for the way he attacked, but Armstrong was waiting for it all to happen, and he just went straight right. Armstrong now is free to fly, and can he fly quick enough to bring back Richard Vironk as they progress towards the summit? I think there are still a couple of riders in front, Alexander Bocharov and Marco Serpellini. I haven't noticed them come back, but now Armstrong is racing, and it's all on a win here, and with every pedal rev, he is going to get seconds more over Yoshiba Bilocchi. The banners are coming at Richard Vironk, quick and fast now. Another kilometre ticked off, 4 to go. The time gap at the last kilometre banner was 3 minutes 50 seconds. It is going to be touch and go now. We're looking at the gloves here of Lance Armstrong. I don't know whether he's just trying to hold his bike on the ground there, because he's going so quickly up this mountain. There are 3 riders, as far as we can work out, still in front of him.
This is unbelievable to watch this pedaling action of the man who is walking away with the Tour de France at the moment. It's a completely different style to that of Richard Vironk. Vironk's style right now reminds me of a former teammate of mine, Robert Albon. He finished 3rd overall in the Tour de France, but he was a climber like this, Longines, like Richard Vironk, always out of the saddle, battling with his machine, looking for any amount of strength just to keep the gears ticking by. Compare that with Armstrong, who sits firmly on his machine and ticks over the pedals at 100 revolutions for every 1 minute.
Well, Baranowski is still in the frame somewhere down the line. They're talking of him being at 3 minutes 15. I'm just wondering if they've confused him with Bocharov, but we'll find out, I'm sure, as Lance Armstrong continues his ascension of the mountain here. To the applause of the crowd, this champion for 3 years of the Tour de France, and soon to be crowned for a 4th year, because there's no doubt he is a man riding in his own atmosphere as he races up the climb. He continues now. Richard Vironk is hanging on. Armstrong is still 3 minutes 50 behind at the 5 kilometre banner.
These men are separated by around about 1 kilometre on the road. Armstrong is looking superb. He may well have left it just a little bit too late to close down on Richard Vironk, but look what waits ahead. Those are the final 4 kilometres of the Mont Ventoux this afternoon, and Vironk coming again to one of the steeper gradients here, getting down into the saddle, just trying to keep the body going, just trying to find the strength to keep his pedals going round, because this man has been away for 195 kilometres on today's stage, and he's hoping to survive for just 4 more. 3 minutes and 43 seconds to Lance Armstrong, and it's in these portions here that Armstrong will eat away 20, 30, 40 seconds for every 1 kilometre of climbing left.
Well, the crowd extraordinarily quiet as they spot the Maillot Jaune on the ascension here, as he concentrates on keeping that cadence up to the required revs per minute. Armstrong just looking at a point in front on the road and just concentrating on his speed. He knows that no one now behind him is staying with him. We drop back a little bit. Here is Rumsas, Basso, Acevedo, and the other rider there with him is Belocchi, as just latching on the back two we have Mancebo now. But he's done well to hang on as they continue through this crowd. They are dropping away from the action.
Armstrong is riding away with the Tour de France here. There are a huge amount of American spectators here, but I think the incredible thing, Phil, about cycling supporters is they're cheering every man on the slopes of this climb here. It doesn't matter whether Richard Virenque is a Frenchman, the Germans, the French and the Belgians and the Dutch, they're all chasing and supporting these men for the phenomenal physical effort that they're putting in.
Perhaps with that shot towards the summit you can get some idea, and it is only some idea, as just how steep Mont Ventoux is. And Armstrong, even though his chain is at the bottom of the gear frame here, just seems to conquer it with great ease. The French flag and the Spanish flag, and they're watching an American here desperately try to scramble up to the leader. He's not going to do it, I don't think, today. This man is suffering now like he's never suffered in a Tour de France before, and he knows the win will mean so much to him and indeed so much to France. Well, those 11 riders had the chance of winning the stage at the bottom of the climb. They all got blown away by Virenque, all picked up by the men behind. It looks as though Pradera is now being dropped as he now cracks, and Belocchi is also shaky. Well, this is amazing. Belocchi tried desperately. He's paying the price here now. Rumsas could well be looking for a higher place in Paris than we thought, because he's still up there.
And look at that ride by Pradera. He'd been dropped and he saw his team leader in difficulty, and he dug even deeper. He pulled himself forward and he's going to try and pace him back to Rumsas. Rumsas is looking at climbing up to second place in the overall standings this afternoon. He's a long way down on Yoshiba Belocchi, but with performances like that over the next couple of days, it's going to be very dramatic in the Alpine passes. Armstrong is still riding. I don't think he's got enough time out on the road to pull back Richard Virenque, because Richard Virenque has still got to pull himself up there. Virenque right now, the top half of his body is singing out in pain to him, saying please stop, but he won't, because he can see as Armstrong goes under the 2-kilometer banner, Richard Virenque is under the 1,000-meter sign.
Well, he may have judged it absolutely to perfection here, because the old legs have gone now. They are on automatic pilot at 1 kilometre to go, but he's probably got the gap that will win him the stage, and you've got to admire the man for that. It was a breakaway of more than 200 kilometres for Virenque to get the victory on Ventoux. He is surviving. Armstrong is coming, but not quick enough now. But the good news for Armstrong is everybody near him in the overall classification is hating Mont Ventoux and losing time. Virenque is coming to the summit of Mont Ventoux in the twilight of his cycling career.
Well, he's been a great climber throughout his career. You don't win the King of the Mountains on 6 separate occasions without being great. And that little victory salute there, slightly reminiscent of the one in Courtrai and Courchevel many years ago. But this one, I think, will probably be the sweetest, because he probably didn't even expect it.
A little gold chain around his neck carries a small bicycle. The big bicycle brought him to the summit today. It's really, really steep, that final corner. It's where Lance said to Pantani, you can win the stage 2 years ago. Well, this time this man has earned it in his own right. 200 kilometres in the lead, and victory for Richard Virenque in the grand style of the Tour de France.
Well, that was courage, Phil. The last 5 kilometres that this man rode were on sheer guts and courage, because he can't have had very much left in his body at all there. The leader of his team at the start, a difficult ride through the Pyrenees, 2 tough Pyrenean stages, got himself the win. Armstrong, though, is doing a great job himself. It's a solitude here, the sole lone ride of Armstrong up the slopes of the Mont Ventoux at the moment, and what he is doing is increasing time over everybody else in the overall classification.
Well, in second place, a Russian rider today, Alexander Botcharov of AG2R, another French team. He grits his teeth on what is one of the steepest sectors of the course. He's allowed to freewheel those last couple of metres at about 1 minute 57. But now, as we look backwards, Armstrong was coming. The mountain just not quite long enough. But this champion of the Tour de France has ripped the legs off all of his main adversaries again, and still he pedals this remarkable low gear. He's going to save or gain more minutes now on the rest as he comes in at 2 minutes 19 seconds. Now this is Rumzas, another outstanding performance by this Lithuanian. And he needs the seconds, and he knows it. He will fight to the line. Seconds could make the difference in Paris. He's got to fight and squeeze them out now, because advantage in the time trial might be his. He comes in at 3:36. Basso at 3:38 for 6th place. This will be Mancebo now coming up to the line too, the other young Spanish rider who's had a great Tour de France so far. It has hurt everybody. Now Balocchi racing for 8th place, as Yoshiba knows now every second is putting him further behind Armstrong in the race. He comes up to the line, he will finish 8th.
Well, you know, if Balocchi had attacked earlier, Armstrong would have countered earlier, and this man might have come over the brow at the finish in the process of being overtaken by a clockwork Texan. He didn't though, and there's confirmation of what a cheap comic might call the 1-2-3. Vironk taking the stage by 1:58 from the only other survivor of the breakaway, Alexander Botcharov, with Armstrong 2:20 back in 3rd and Balocchi another 1:45 behind him. 7.5 minutes behind the winner, and slipping down the placings was the former yellow jersey Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano, while Santiago Botero, who started the day 5th, had an even worse Ventoux experience, coming in over 15 minutes back. Behind them, David Miller came in 67th, 18 minutes down, while of the sprinters, Eric Zabel survived the day better than Robbie McEwen, although there were no points for either of them. Afterwards, David Miller spoke to Matt Rendell.
David Miller, that looked hellish.
Yeah, it was. It was a horrible day. A really hard day.
Was your performance affected by yesterday's victory and celebrations?
No, not celebrations, just yesterday being off the front for 170 Ks. Just a really hard climb, just tired.
At the finish, the French popular hero who tried and failed to escape from a mountain stage win 2 days running congratulated the one who finally managed it. Some of his past victories may have been tainted by a suspension for drug use, but today Richard Vironk seems to have shown that he can still win and win clean.
J'y ai cru au bout de 4 km d'ascension parce que j'avais les jambes qui tournaient pas mal et j'étais survolté. J'ai vu tout ce public qui était là et j'ai dit maintenant c'est à toi à jouer, et oublie que t'as mal et j'ai tout donné.
It's hard to close a gap like that, especially on a climber. So, but the Ventoux is a special beast. You never know what happens to somebody up top, and I didn't lose hope. I was going as hard as I could to try and win the stage. But hey, what a great ride!
Different scenery, same suffering in prospect. Today, the Tour arrived in the Alps, and here's a reminder of how things stood coming into it. Lance Armstrong in control of the race with a lead of over 4 minutes on his closest challenger, Oseba Balocchi. Lance Armstrong's challengers face the same problem they had in the Pyrenees: how to cope with the murderous pace he's been setting in the mountains with that distinctive high cadence riding style. Of course, if you look up cadence in the dictionary, there's no mention of pedalling frequency, or in fact cycling at all. But the main definition tells you all you need to know anyway: the beat or measure of something rhythmic. And on the evidence of the last couple of years, it looks as though Lance has got non-stop techno coming through his earpiece, while the rest of the peloton is tuned to Radio 2.
It is going to be a question of setting the tempo, which is his. That cadence is unbelievable. He ticks over those pedals.
Armstrong climbs on a small gear and turns the pedals up to 100 times a minute. That's maybe 20 times per minute more than serious climbers like Balocchi and Botero, and incidentally, more than Lance Armstrong Mark 1. When he first raced the Tour, he rode like most non-flyweights do, on power. It wasn't until his post-cancer reinvention of himself as a cyclist that he adopted the baby steps approach in conjunction with his coach, Chris Carmichael.
What Lance will do is keep his pedal cadence higher than most of his opponents out there. He'll probably average about 90 to maybe 100 RPMs at times. That kind of helps reduce muscle stress, saves his legs, and keep himself essentially fresher for the climb.
Same speed, less effort is the magic formula sought by every cyclist. Not surprisingly, it's starting to catch on.
Sure, he does pedal at high frequency, but that's mainly when we see him on the TV in those attacking, winning moves. The rest of the time, he's not quite so high. It's only when he's really on the attack, and that's the difference. I think to attack, you've got to be able to rev out on the mountains, which is very, very difficult to do. The rest of the time, you've got to be trying to sit in and just maintain that momentum, which is what he's doing generally behind his US train. He's very, very comfortable. Definitely what he's doing now is what I'd imagine a lot of the guys are trying to follow and try and copy.
In cycling at the moment, his fashion is high cadence because Lance is winning. If Lance wasn't winning and it was Ulrich winning with big gear, everyone would be training big gear. Whoever wins the Tour de France creates the fashion.
Coming from the track and a time trial background, I was very much a drop heel sort of driving cyclist. But in the mountains, we've seen Lance on his, he's on his toes, he's pedaling away, and it works. It's definitely the way to go. It just takes a lot of time, a lot of work to become efficient yourself, especially if you haven't been that way the rest of your career.
So this time next year, the entire peloton could be metronoming up mountains like wind-up toys. Although following fashion doesn't necessarily mean being able to catch it. Armstrong's ascent of Mont Ventoux on Sunday was timed at 58 minutes, the fastest the famous mountain's ever been climbed in the Tour. Just the kind of news to put the rest of the peloton in the mood for a big alpine day. And there it is, the longest of the entire race at 226.5 kilometres. 6 minor climbs along the way, before the big one up to Les Deux Alpes. Christophe Moreau wouldn't be climbing it though. The Credit Agricole leader, who'd spent most of the Tour either on the floor or trying to put other riders there, crashed again, gashed his lip and abandoned what's been a miserable race for him, with the misery clearly evident as he went. The day's Reckless Driver Award, meanwhile, went to Benoit Joachim of US Postal, clearly failing to stay in lane on one of the climbs and cutting up Bonjour's Sylvain Chavanel. At the front, Santiago Botero was the highest placed rider in a 7-man break which at one stage had built up a lead of over 10 minutes. As we join it, they're on the final climb with a lead of about 9 minutes and less than 11 kilometres to go. The pace of the chasing bunch, meanwhile, is shelling riders off the back.
As he's inside 3.5 kilometres to go to the finish now for Santiago Botero. Former white jersey winner, former King of the Mountains. He won the King of the Mountains back in 2000. He's won 2 stages before, one in 2000 at Briançon, and of course here at Lorient in the time trial, which he can claim now to be the first Colombian to do that. Now Mario Hertz has come up behind Axel Merckx here at the back of the race. So they're riding for second and third, while the leader is at 3 kilometres from the summit, and I can't see anybody getting to him now. The Once Armstrong peloton at 7 minutes and 7 seconds. They're closing, but not quick enough, I don't think. The breakaway will succeed today. Merckx really has been the King of the Mountains on this day, winning most of them, and probably having done enough to claim 5th or 6th place overall in the King of the Mountains, not the race, by the way. This is another move. It could be Mancebo.
Quick response coming from Once. They're nailing everything back right now, trying to keep control of the front end of the main field. Armstrong quite happy today. The only teammate I think he's got left in this group with him, in fact, is Roberto Heras, who's been kept in reserve. The man on the front right now there is Michael Bogert. He'll be doing the work for Levi Leipheimer. Leipheimer is in that group. I've seen him once or twice fairly close to the front, so he's conserving his 9th place in the overall classification.
Meanwhile, back in the struggling department now, it looks like Ivan Gotti, twice a winner of the Giro d'Italia, and also there is Oscar Sevilla hanging on to the tail of this group. Well, and not quite the rider he was last year, Paul, is he?
He hasn't had a great Tour de France so far. In fact, he's in a group of riders, I think, just making contact with the Armstrong group. There, I thought, was a quick glimpse of Roberto Heras. There's number 1, Armstrong. On the far side there, Massimiliano Lelli, but this is the man who will get the victory this afternoon. And again, what a tough way to win a mountain stage, going out on the attack 100 miles from the finish. A quick glimpse there, Leipheimer moving up to the front of his group there with Michael Bogert. And the race completely opened up here by Santiago Botero. He will get the win this afternoon, and that will make him only the second person in this bike race to have multiple wins to his credit, because Armstrong is the only other person to have won more than one stage so far. Armstrong has a total of 3, and with this win today, this man will get himself his second.
Lance Armstrong about to end his 5th day as race leader of the Tour de France. His rivals clearly have not had the strength to lift the tempo and try to leave him. They've used their team to set the pace, but they haven't cracked Lance Armstrong. This rider wanted the stage win, 18 minutes slower than Armstrong to this point of the Tour de France. No longer a marked man. He's pulling back possibly 4 or 5 minutes of those lost 18. And he might well do well in the time trial still to come, and of course the 2 remaining mountain stages. But today he went out to make amends for the disaster of Mont Ventoux, and he's certainly done that as Santiago Botero comes up towards the line as a Colombian for his 2nd stage win of the year in the Tour de France, that is. He won the time trial at Lorient. Now he's going to win the road race stage here to Les Deux Alpes. The only other man to win here, Marco Pantani. He's delighted, absolutely delighted now. This was a long way to go for the win, but he read it right, as the breakaway did the other day on Mont Ventoux. This time he's done it. Thank you, he says, and there's a lot of Colombian flags waving. Like all good professionals, make sure there's nobody creeping up, and there isn't.
Well, that was a great win, absolutely superb, and a long way out. This man is really a gutsy bike rider. Losing 15 minutes can blow your morale completely, and that's what he lost on the slopes of the Mont Ventoux. But today he came back and looked for the breakaway. He knows there'll be breakaways every day right now, because Armstrong's not going to chase men who are 20 minutes behind him in the overall classification, and he got himself the win.
Botero delighted, his bike probably just relieved. And behind him, the chief survivors of the original break, led home by Mario Hertz, who won the Belgian subcategory ahead of Axel Merckx. Behind them, though, the yellow jersey group, with nothing major at stake, was refusing to come quietly.
And here comes an attack from Bolocchi. Now there's the reaction from Armstrong. It was a little bit slow. He said, that's number 21, that's the man second to me, so he's gone after him. And Armstrong now, look at that, that's a cheeky move, Paul.
Well, it's a very good move by Bolocchi. In fact, he's opened up the gap.
He's gone straight past Heras.
Acceleration. Heras is there, he'll look over his shoulder and see Armstrong, but Armstrong won't panic. We are now looking at just seconds is what Bolocchi can gain if Armstrong doesn't come to his wheel. But I think the Texan has got this one under complete control. Slowly but surely, he's pulling himself back up to the slipstream, and Rumsas, look how attentive he is, Phil. He's come across there as well. These are the top 3 riders in the overall standings of the Tour de France this year. It was a brave move, but it's done nothing at all to change the standings.
A huge move on a huge gear by Yoshiba Bolocchi, and Armstrong a little bit slow to react and a bit shocked maybe, but he's got out of that hole very, very easily indeed. Concentrating, look at his face as he comes up here and just gets onto the back wheel of Bolocchi. And goes Rumsas now, because Rumsas is looking for second place, and there's a little reminder too that he might well be looking for second place overall in these next 2 days in the mountains.
Rumsas keeping the viewing figures high in Lithuania, and he led home the yellow jersey group ahead of Bolocchi and the jersey himself. All of them, of course, on the same time. The big story of the day, though, was Santiago Botero's 2nd stage win of this tour, and afterwards he spoke to Matt Rendell.
Ha sido un triunfo para mí en este tour, mucho mejor que quedar cuarto, quinto en la general. Ganar 2 etapas de diferentes tipos, como una como la montaña y la otra como la contrarreloj, para mí es un triunfo. Y bueno, tuve un día malo. Soy humano, no soy una máquina, como todos los que estamos aquí, y bueno, afortunadamente conté con libertad hoy para coger la fuga por el tiempo que había perdido el Mont Ventoux, y bueno, de la escapada pude mantener un fuerte ritmo en la ascensión y llegar primero a la meta.
You know, the only men who've won mountain stages and long time trials the past 5 years have also won the Tour. Botero has shown he can do both, although of course those lost 15 minutes on Mont Ventoux put him well out of contention for the overall. And while the Kelme team mechanics set about straightening Botero's bike frame, the rest of the race was arriving on the instalment programme. Eric Zabel came home in a group just under 20 minutes behind the winner, with David Miller just over. Another couple of minutes back was Robbie McEwen. So no substantial change on the leaderboard, except that Santiago Botero moves up to 7th after clawing back almost half the 15 minutes he lost on stage 14. At the top, Armstrong is treating Bolocchi more like an annoyance than anything else, watching him all day and running after him like an irritated parent only when necessary.
That was a strong attack at the end, actually. I didn't expect that, and I didn't know he was attacking until they told me on the radio. But it's important that you cover all of those attacks, because if they feel like, you know, one day say you let him go and he gets 10 seconds, then all of a sudden he has this huge morale boost, and the next day he attacks all day long. So it's important you jump on it immediately and not necessarily show them who's boss, but certainly let them know that you're not going to let him go.
Well, he's got 3 kids of his own, Lance, so he knows the importance of instilling discipline, and he remains what that great cycling fan Ray Winston might call the daddy.